Record. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our CASA 101 meeting for today. I am Katie Yim, Wyoming's Orphan Sunday Coordinator. I am so glad you are here taking the time to learn more about CASA. So everyone is aware this meeting is being recorded for future training and recruitment opportunities. We are going to start with a brief presentation by Sarah, our local CASA director. She's going to explain a little bit about the program before we move into our Q&A time with the panel. And feel free, if you want to use the chat box, if you think of questions as you go ahead. You can also unmute later during the Q&A. So, Sarah, all you.
Well, thank you, Katie, and thank you for, goodness, sorry, I'm making a mess over here. And thank you for hosting this with us to talk about what CASA is and what we do. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, which gives children in foster care an advocate to be their voice and to speak up in their best interest, and to also let the judges know what their wishes are too in their court reports. Other than our 2.5 staff members, everybody in our CASA organization is a volunteer. And so we have currently about 60 advocates here in Laramie County acting as voices for our children. And they range from all kinds of ages. You just have to be 21 or older to be an advocate for CASA. You have to be able to pass a criminal background check and then go through a 30-hour training that's hosted at our local office, or sometimes via Zoom, depending on the times, to get trained, and then you're sworn in by a judge, which I think is one of the most important parts, is that we are recognized through the court system to be that voice for the child. And so the judge does give us that authority to attend court hearings, speak up on behalf of the child, and then attend other meetings such as MDTs and team meetings.
Thank you, Sarah. So now we'll have some time to just talk about our personal experiences with CASA. Everybody you see here is a CASA, and I am also a CASA. So I'll start off the introductions, and then all the other panelists will have a chance to share their stories before we start having some questions. So I have had 2 cases so far. My first case was a little girl. She was in a really awesome foster home with an elderly couple who were not able to keep her forever. DFS was working a case plan of reunification with her mother, but everyone knew that was highly unlikely, but that was where the case stood, and there was no other plans. They didn't even have team meetings on the schedule because she was not a squeaky wheel. Her foster home was awesome, so everyone just ignored the long-term problem, that there wasn't a long-term solution for her. So when I showed up, I asked the caseworker, oh, well, where's Dad? Because I just came out of training and learned you're supposed to ask about the parents. And she was like, oh, I'm sure he's not interested. But we didn't contact him. Oh, okay. So then she got to thinking, she's like, oh, I guess we probably should have done that. Because of our conversation, she reached out to Dad, and he was totally interested in his daughter. And so I helped get the visits needed so that he could build a relationship with her. And she soon happily reunified with him. The case was closed. Both the worker and the attorney were like, this case never would have closed without a CASA. And I have no idea how long she would have stayed in her impermanent foster home if I hadn't pushed the case forward. So my current case is a sibling set. They were in a really short-term foster home who could not keep them forever. But again, it was a really amazing home. So the team could basically ignore the case, even though the children were legally free for adoption and needed an adoptive home. DFS wanted them to be adopted by a Cheyenne family to make things simple, but no one in Cheyenne was interested in them. And that was where they were gonna leave it, with the kids remaining in an impermanent home indefinitely, possibly till they turned 18. I advocated for us to cast a wider net for an adoptive home, and I helped sift through all the applications from around the country and ultimately help match them with an out-of-state family. They are now happily living with that family and on track to finalize their adoption in the next few months. Again, without me, I don't know if the case would have closed. I'm not trying to boast about myself. I just did my job as a CASA. And that is how important CASAs are. Without us, kids don't have a voice, and they do fall through the cracks, especially if they're not squeaky wheels. And so with only a few hours a month, you can literally change the life of a child forever. And that is what makes CASA so amazing. So those are my personal CASA experiences. George, would you like to share your stories?
Yes, George Murchio. I've been at CASA for 2.5 years, and the cases vary quite a lot. I'm on my 5th case now, and I'm actually on it's the first case I have where the child is separated from the parent. So cases I had before were education neglect, where the young boy was living with his mom, but she was just having a hard time getting him doing the things that he needed to do to be a healthy and happy 11-year-old boy. And it was an interesting case because as we looked at it, the mom just really didn't want to be separated from her son and didn't want him to go to school as a result. And you get to know these kids, and you never know when they're going to react, or if they're going to react to you in a positive way. And this was a case where there was no difficulty in family reunification. He was living at home with his mom, but he wasn't getting an education. He was a couple of years behind the other kids, and his mom was more interested in keeping him home. So, it was my first case, and you never know when you're going to be able to make that connection, or even if you're going to make a good connection with the kid. And, but I did get to know this young guy and really got to like him quite a lot. Very, very personable young guy. And, he finally really started to share his feelings about, he just wanted to be a normal kid. He wanted to go to school. He didn't want to do remote learning anymore. He wanted to be in there with the other kids. And I think the case really turned on just one thing I said to him. And he was either 11 or 12 when I said it to him. And look at this little kid who's just doesn't have the advantages of a lot of good parenting. And I looked at him and I said, and I won't use his name, I said, you're not too young to start taking control of your own life. Now, this is a young kid, a very young kid. I would have felt the need to have said this to one of my own children as they were growing up. But when I said that to him, he looked at me and he just kind of nodded his head. And I said, do you think you can talk to your mom about what you want to do? And he said, yeah, I can do it. And from that point forward, he convinced his mom to let him go back to school, to make sure that his alarm was set in the morning. And he went back, and he's about 1.5 years behind the boys that were the kids that were his age. And I told him, I said, you're going to go back into that school. I said, you better be ready for some abuse. And I said, it's going to go on for a while. It's not going to stop quickly. And he prepared himself, and he did quite well. So, I'm not going to talk about all the other cases, but I guess my general point is, you don't know when you start a case, even if you're going to make a good connection with the child. And if you do, it happens just by being patient. And it happens when it happens, and if it's going to happen. But it kind of convinced me that with the right patience and just giving the kid a chance to trust you, you can help them make things happen. You can't make things happen yourself in a lot of these cases. You can help. In the cases that I've had, it's always been a matter of giving the kids an opportunity to make the changes.
Thank you, George. Jim, would you like to share with us your experiences with CASA?
Yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I'm wiping my eyes because I'm tired. It's been a long day for me, but yes, like George, I think it's probably close to 2 years now. I volunteered because I wanted to give back to the community, and kids are where my heart is. My first child was a fairly easy one. These are all challenging. The first one was a young couple that needed to learn some parenting skills. They were in their 20s. Their child was taken away from them, placed in foster care by DFS because of neglect, reported neglect with a little infant. Good news story though was that I was able to, it was an infant, couldn't do anything for the child, but was able to work with the parents, and we're still staying in contact today. The unification happened in 6 months, but I was able just to be a friend, tell them, you know, work with them with DFS and with their parenting skills, and told them what they needed to do. So she's now, child has been reunified with the parents. Great news story. She's since, I think, 6 months ago joined the Air National Guard. So things are looking well for them. So that one was I don't know if that was an easy one to get me started, but that one was definitely a fairly easy one. But it was good. I developed a friendship with the parents. And the second case that I was given that I'm still working with now, unfortunately, was a sad story, and this is why CASA is there. This teenage individual, I call him my buddy, he was left alone. It was reported to the police, and it was due to both parents being drug users. So this one has been going on for almost over a year now. Some challenges for me was my foster kid thinks so much of his dad. So trying to find that balance where I'm not saying, well, what your dad is telling you is wrong. But hopefully just try to give him some options and say, well, hey, what about thinking about life this way? You know, unfortunately, because he does think a lot of his dad, he was trying to follow his dad's habits and the way he talked about women and different things like that, was expelled from school, was placed in the Laramie child home there. I did get a chance to visit him. Things kind of stopped a lot, I think, for all of us with COVID, so I wasn't able to visit a lot. But he's since left the children's home. He's back with his foster parent, and now he has a girlfriend. So my time with him is a little limited now. So that's good though. But we can connect, we do. And I just enjoy, the foster parent told me he thinks so much of me because I'm there, and we can just talk, and you know, as a man to him, and still give him that support. And good news again is that the parents appear now to be working towards the program that they're required by DFS, and hopefully in the next 6 months or so, they'll be unified back with their child. So any questions?
I think what you're saying, Jim, my understanding is that there are more boys in foster care than girls across America, right, Sarah?
Okay.
And I'm guessing that having a male CASA for a teenage boy is hugely impactful for him, to have a really strong positive male influence. And so I think that really says something about having men as CASAs come in, because there are so many boys in foster care who need men to come and be positive role models for them. So thank you, both of you, that you're being.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Marisa, would you like to share with us your stories of CASA?
Absolutely. I became a CASA advocate in 2013, so I've been doing this about a little over 7 years. And then in 2019, I became a part-time staff member at CASA of Laramie County, which has been very rewarding as well. I've had 10 cases. I've served 15 children, and 4 cases were family reunification, either with a parent or another family member. 2 cases, the children aged out of the system, and 1 case was a guardianship, and 1 case was an adoption. And my 2 current cases, which haven't closed yet, are pending adoption, and they'll both be adopted by family members. This has been such a rewarding journey for me. I've just really enjoyed it. I really can't think of any particular case that has been the most successful. They've all had a successful outcome. One of my kids have ranged in age from an infant to obviously 18 because they've aged out of the system. One of my kiddos was 8 months old, and he was had physical abuse. There was some reports of shaken baby and by the mother's boyfriend, and the little guy went to Children's Hospital. It was touch and go whether he was going to make it or not. It was pretty sad. The first time I met him at a supervised visit was at LifeNet, and it just really tore up my heart to think of the injuries that child sustained. And the grandparents ended up adopting him, but they did not know at the time that he received his injuries that he was their grandson. And through some genetic testing, they found the father, and the father's parents adopted the little boy. He has been a miracle child. I saw them just recently. The case closed in, I believe, 2017, and I just recently saw them, and that little boy has made such progress. They didn't know if he'd even be able to walk, but through all of the programs that they were allowed to put him in, he can walk, and he just talks up a storm. He'll be 5 years old, and he is just a true success story, and it just really pulls at my heartstrings to know that he is in such good hands, and the outcome of that case was so wonderful.
Thank you so much, Marisa. That is really encouraging.
Mhm.
Sandy, I think you've had a long CASA history. If you want to share with us your history.
I'm trying to compile it in my brain. So I became an advocate in February of 2016. And then I had my first case, and it seemed to be very difficult. I wasn't having a whole lot of communication with, the people that were involved. So I went into the office to talk to the executive director. I was having challenges. How can you help me, get to see this child? And at that time, they said, well, we want to talk to you too. So I thought I was really in trouble, going to get fired as an advocate, a volunteer advocate, and they asked me to come and work for them part-time. So I started working part-time for CASA in July of 2016. And then I did go to a full-time status as a case manager last year in 2019. So I've had 4 years with CASA. I've had a variety of cases. I've also had 10 cases, and I've had 12 children. My children range from the infancy to, I have actually 2 children that did also age out. I had 2 sisters at 2 different times. So one sister was in the system and the other sister was not. And then, we kind of combined my advocacy to do both girls, and then one closed and then it reopened, and it was just a really yo-yo case. The one that's really close to my heart is the one that I've been on the longest, which has been 4 years, is a boy. He was 14 when I got him, and he just turned 18 the end of October, and so therefore he did age out. He's had a tough road. It's a big family, and mom just pretty much abandoned and gave her rights away for all of the children. What's very important to understand as a CASA advocate is we are the voice for the children, and that is what we do. And we can be that voice for that infant just as well as we can be the voice for that 18-year-old or, etc. But it's very important, as James has stated, that, you might work with the parents. That might be the avenue. George worked with grandma. It's just like you just really have to open mind and open heart to give these people the resources that they need to be successful in parenting. We all probably had different avenues of resources, but our children that are in the system, their parents just haven't been given that, been dealt that card, that hand of cards or whatever. They just need the resources, and sometimes that's what we're here to help them. I helped my one mom with a 2-year-old get a house, get a job, the resources for that. I did try to have her go to climb Wyoming, which she just didn't follow through. But also that was a very emotional case because the foster family had that child for 2 years. And so we always want reunification in the first year, and then we try to move on to a concurrent plan. So the foster family was thinking that they were going to get to adopt this child, and they didn't. But I was able to talk to mom and dad that it's very important that these foster parents remain with that little boy. And so kind of like we worked out a visitation schedule for the foster parents to also interact with the child. The variety of ages that we have, it's the entities that we work with. It's just very important that we have the open communication, the resources, the staff at CASA. We're here to help any advocate at any time, because not any of us have the actual answer. A lot of times we're brainstorming with each other on what do you think is best? What's the direction we should go? What should we offer for this family? Maybe we can offer something that hasn't even been presented to them. Maybe we can request more visitation or more unsupervised visitation or drop-ins, or how do we get them back, the children back with their parents? And how do we get the parents to be successful? So like I said, I've had a wide variety, and I really appreciate it. I love working for CASA. Again, it's kind of like I finally got the job that I wanted to when I grew up. And so this is what I enjoy doing. And being the voice for the child is at any age, from infant to 18, and helping. I know Maurice has had one child that aged out, and she was able to help him with his education and college and that type of thing. So these are avenues that we can help with these children to help be their voice.
Thank you, Sandy. And you bring up a good point too about working with the biological parents. DFS is supposed to be there to support them, but they are stretched very thin. And so a lot of times these parents don't have the knowledge or the resources to fulfill what's on their case plan. And yet they're told, here's your case plan. If you finish it, and you can have your kid back. And they're like, well, I don't need it. And they just don't have what it takes. And so having a CASA to come alongside them and connect them to those resources, like a job or like a home, can get the case closed faster, which the longer a kid is separated from their parents, the worse it is for the kid. And this just sucks for the kid if the parent doesn't know how to find a job. And that's why the case takes forever to close. So.
Well, and with that, Katie, can you hear me okay? Am I echoing? Okay. With that, it's true that a parent goes through a case plan through DFS. That's kind of like a procedure, like a legal procedure to do. They want to check off the boxes to what they need to get their child back. But if they don't have, we're more like friends to them, as well as James has stated, and George. We build a different relationship with the parent, and we also build a different relationship with the child, because we're volunteers. We have that investment as friends, and both to the adults and to the children. So we bring a different avenue because we wear a different hat. And so that's what we do to make the family unity be successful.
Just to reinforce that idea that we're the advocates for the kids. And, where am I going to go with this? I had a case last year, just to let you know, where it was 3 boys, 3 brothers, 2 years apart, adolescent to mid-teen. And their circumstances were tough. Their mom just had a terrible drug addiction problem, and she was neglecting them, and her many boyfriends were abusing the boys. And I got to know these boys pretty quickly. They opened up. They're very intelligent kids. You could tell that very quickly, that they were really alert, they were articulate, very polite. And you know, so many times I've been in these circumstances where, you know, these kids have had such a tough time of it, and they're still speaking to me respectfully. They are articulate, and with this case, after, you know, Wyoming law is that we want reunification with the parents, and we have to keep that in mind at all times. That's the law. And but as I got to know these guys, and they started to open up to me, I opened up a conversation with them on that topic. And the older of the brothers looked at me, and it was sort of a lighthearted conversation up to that point. And he looked at me and he said, "Look, George, our mom has been doing this for a long time, and we've tried to give her a lot of chances. And we're just at the point now where we can't get our hopes up anymore because she keeps letting us down. So we're very grateful that our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they're actually living with great-grandparents at the time." He said to me, "We are so grateful that we have other family here that we can count on, because we can't count on our mom." And and he looked at me very, very gravely as he was saying this. So I never brought the topic of reunification with their mother up again. I figured, okay, the caseworker can work on this. I'm an advocate for the kid. And what the kid is telling me is that he's afraid of his mom. And so that's where you have to sort of strike that balance between, yes, we are all working for family reunification, but never ahead of when the parents are capable of taking on that responsibility again, and if they are. So, that was one where being an advocate for the kid had me at, not aligned in the purposes of the mom, because the mom was just not, it just wasn't, sadly, it wasn't a priority for her, the health and welfare of her three boys, and they knew it. And they were old enough, 16, 14, and 12. These kids are becoming quite aware at these ages. So that's kind of the balance you have to strike. We are the advocate for the kid. And if the kids don't want to if they're afraid to get back with their mom, it's our job to let people know that that's the case, sad as it might be. So.
Yeah.
And one other point I'd just like to make really, really quickly. With all the craziness and the rough things that these kids are going through, sometimes they can do things and say things that are really funny about, they get in these stressful situations with one of mom's drunk boyfriends, and they'll tell me what they did to handle the situation, and I'm doing everything I can to suppress a grin, because they can be very clever and resourceful. And it's awful that they're in those circumstances. But when you realize what they're doing to take care of themselves, sometimes you just can't help but say, my gosh, what these kids can do for themselves. It's amazing.
Yeah, they've had such strong resilience.
Oh, it's remarkable.
Amazing survival skills. Sarah, we still would like to hear from you and your personal experiences with CASA.
Thank you, Katie. So as Katie mentioned before, I am the new executive director at CASA. I've only been in this role for 3 months now, but I first became involved with CASA back towards the end of 2012. I became an advocate down in Georgia because CASA is a nationwide program. And so I became an advocate down in Georgia, and while I was there, I advocated for 5 families. And then when I moved back here, one of my first calls when I got here was to the local CASA here and said, I was a CASA in Georgia, I want to be a CASA here, sign me up, let's get to going, because I really believe in what we do as an advocate. As you can see from everybody's different stories, there are so many ways that CASA advocates plug in to a case and to help and advocate for that child, whether it's to advocate for reunification, advocate for adoption, whatever it may be. But the CASA's job is to really look at helping that child obtain a safe and permanent home. So while in Georgia, I advocated for 5 cases. And then when I got here, I advocated for 1 more case. And then due to a job that I had in a conflict of interest, I stopped being an advocate, but joined the board of directors for CASA and stayed involved that way, and was a part from 2016, excuse me, until now on the board, and then took over as in this role 3 months ago. And in that time, I can tell you, I think CASA advocates bring such a unique perspective, because they're not the DFS caseworker, they're not the guardian ad litem, they're not, the therapist or anything like that. They are just a normal person who comes into that child's life and spends time with that child, gets to know them, spends time with their, biological family, their foster families. They really interact with everybody, and they bring unique perspectives. And sometimes things that nobody else on the team slowed down enough, I guess is the way I'd say it, to realize. And meaning I can remember a case when I was down in Georgia. We had this little boy who, like everybody, all of these kiddos, had just this really awful story and just a really hard time. And when he was placed into foster care for the second time, we very quickly saw his grades start tanking and things like that, which nobody questioned, because of course, like, this kid had been through such horrible things. And so when his grades started tanking, everybody just said, well, yeah, of course, like, he's had so much trauma in his life. And I just went down and I was visiting with this little boy, and we were playing basketball outside in the driveway. And I said, well, how's school going? And he tells me it's really bad. And I said, well, how come? And he said, I usually get really good grades, but I'm not anymore. And I said, yeah. I said, what makes you think that's happening? Why do you think that's happening, basically? And he said, well, everything here is so different. And in the county I lived in Georgia, their CASA office there served 5 different counties. And so these children, it wasn't uncommon for them to be taken from one county and placed into a foster home that was maybe 150, 200 miles away, which was really, really hard on these kids, because their entire lives change. As much as it changes when you come into foster care anyways, this gets even harder when you have to change to a new school, everything. Well, it just so happened too that this child was placed into a home that was just very culturally and racially very, very different than he was. And so he said, everything is different. He said, nobody looks like me. Nobody eats food that I like to eat. And everything is just so different. And so I just began speaking to the team about how the struggles that this boy had expressed to me and what his feelings were on it. And eventually we were able to move him into a foster home that was back in his original county. And so he was back in his regular school. And very shortly after that, we saw his grades start clinking right back up there into a really good level. And I remember him just saying, it's so nice to just not have one more thing different in my life, to just have something that remains the same. And so, nothing against any of the other team members, but I think it just took somebody slowing down enough to ask that kiddo from his mind what was going on, why it was happening for him. And that's what I think CASAs do more than anything, is they give their time to a child without even being paid. They're the one person in there who's there because they choose to be there, not because somebody's paying them, not because somebody's telling them that they have to. They're there just to be there for that child and to just figure out what is in that child's best interest. And so I really think that's the way that CASAs make the biggest difference, is that they give time to that child more than anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So before I moved here to Wyoming, I worked in a group home for kids in the foster care system. And that's one of the reasons why I became a CASA, because I saw CASAs make a difference for the kiddos that I worked with. And it was amazing. As Sarah said, CASAs are not paid. And especially kids in a group home, that might be the one person they talk to every week that is not paid to talk to them. And obviously us staff, we're not paid a lot, but we were paid to work with them. And their therapists are, you know, paid to work with them. Everybody, their teachers, everybody they interact with in their whole life is paid to interact with them, except the CASA. The CASA shows up and says, I'm here because I want to be, because you matter to me enough as an individual. I don't need a paycheck to see you. And so, I mean, it really transforms their lives. And I think that's the other special thing about a CASA too, is we can't blame DFS caseworkers for not having the time for the kids, or GALs for not having the time, because they have so many kids on all their cases. They don't have the time of day to give every kid. We have one case, or maybe two. I guess, you know, if you work at the CASA office, you like get a gold star and get an extra one, but most of us have one case, so we are dedicated to that one kid, and they have all of our attention, and we pour into them, and we're not spread thin. We're not trying, you know, caseworkers have like 30 plus kids, and they have to, you know, do 1,000 things for each of them every month. And then GALs have like 100 kids. So they just, of course kids fall through the cracks, but they don't fall through our cracks because we have only one. And that's what's so powerful about CASA.
And Katie, I might add to that, we are probably sometimes the only consistent member of that team, because they can change caseworkers, they can change guardian ad litems. So we are that one consistent person in their lives that they will know that we are going to be there for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am an adoption specialist. Right now I am working with a kid in Wyoming foster care to try to get an adoption situation. And she has been in care for 5 years. And she's had at least 5 caseworkers, several GALs, like 11 foster families. The one people that have been around from the beginning of her case is her CASAs, and it's a married couple, and they have been there from the beginning. And it's like, what? Her whole life, 5 years, everything changes. She's moved cities, she's moved around Wyoming, but she has these CASAs, and they stuck with her 5 years. And so that, I mean, I think that's one of the ways that you don't develop things like RAD, because you have an attachment figure that stays with you. And so, especially in these long cases with the older kids, if you can be the CASA that prevents them from getting RAD because you give them that attachment, that's huge. All right, so we have heard everybody's stories. Feel free to ask questions. I have some questions as well. If, you know, Gracie, you don't have a whole ton. But yeah, shoot and fire.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. I was just wondering, what does the process normally look like when you first get a case? Like, do you normally go meet with the kid first, and is it normally like you meet with them on a regular basis, or you, like, I don't know, I'm just wondering more of what it looks like from start to finish.
I will go ahead and start to address this. So when you're assigned a case, we definitely, the staff will walk you through what concepts and aspects you need to do. We give you the basic information to the case, and what we recommend is you first meet with your DFS worker, because they will know more as well about the case. And if it's, let's say you won't get the case right as, like, we'll get what we call a shelter care hearing, and that's when the child gets taken into protective custody and that type of information. So you'll get the case a little bit later, maybe even a month later, but you will meet with your DFS worker. And then a lot of times a DFS worker will actually go with you to meet your child. We just this last week, we assigned a new one of our advocates, a new case, and then yesterday Marisa went with her to meet the family and the children and that type of thing. So we will go with you on your first case. We will attend any meeting that is on the itinerary for you to go to. We will help you in a court case. We will help you at a multiple MDT meeting, and we will walk alongside you and then help you along the way. And then when you feel comfortable, then we ask you to meet with the kid at least one time, the child at least one time a month. And we have very many different avenues of suggestions that you can do things with the child in the community, George is awesome about taking kids fishing, and I want to go with George whenever he has a kid because he sends information in. And I'm like, George, can I go with you next time? You know, James does really great things with his kiddos too. So Marissa's awesome. You know, she's actually got some kiddos in Colorado that are living with their grandparents, and she goes and visits them in Colorado. Our CASA office, we have an actual kitchen area, so you could bring the kiddos to our CASA office and bake cookies or cook or do crafts. We have games, you know, anything that can kind of make you have that relationship with them. My 10-year-old girl, she loves soccer. So it was the best thing in the world for me to do was to attend a soccer game. So, you know, just kind of getting that relationship going with them. So again, we walk alongside of you, and we won't just send you out there to, you know, make it on your own per se. We'll be there with you with all the legal stuff and all the, we'll introduce you to your DFS worker, and we guide you along that way. Anybody else?
Sarah, maybe you, this is more of a logistical question, but how many kids do we have in Laramie County right now in foster care, and how many kids do not have a CASA?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to rough math here compared to the beginning of the month, and but I think we're sitting at about 146 right now with some new cases that have come in, and out of those we have about, well, with the new cases, probably about 37 of them who need advocates. And so now some of that's, you know, siblings, and some of it is just singular children. And so we have a huge need. And as you can imagine, cases fluctuate is when they come into care. And we have seen during COVID, we kind of had a stall out period where there wasn't a whole lot of cases that came in during that time. But since July, we have steadily began to creep back up there. I think this month, Marisa, Sandy, correct me if I'm not wrong, but I think 3 so far this month we've gotten.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we constantly are having new cases coming in, and so we're always looking for advocates to join us and help, because we've got kiddos waiting for somebody.
What is the time commitment?
It depends on each individual person. As Sandy was saying earlier, we ask everybody to see their child at least once a month. Some months can be a little bit busier than others because of court hearings or team meetings, those kinds of things. I would say probably even on a busy month with, you know, let's say if you had like an MDT, a team meeting, and a court hearing all in the same month, you're going to run probably about around maybe 10 hours at max, depending how many times you also went to see the kiddo during that time. But on average, you're spending probably about 5 hours or so a month if you're seeing the kiddo once, with your meetings and MDTs and court reports and things.
And Sarah, did you want to tell Gracie about the training? How many hours training?
We do have, yeah, the training to join to become a CASA advocate is a 30-hour training. We have just completed one and are looking to start one again in come January, February kind of time period after the holidays. The 30 hours. With this group, we did it 2 days a week for 3 hours each day for the entire month of October. Other times we've done, you know, 3-hour nights, 4 days a week for 2 or 3 weeks. And so it just kind of depends on the flow of everybody else, but we do have to complete that 30-hour training in order to swear everybody in and be able to assign somebody to a case.
What if somebody's work schedule doesn't allow them to come to all the trainings, but they still want to be a CASA?
I was going to ask about.
Okay.
Yeah, so we try to do a couple of different things. So like this go around, we did actually a morning class and a nighttime class. And then the classes mirrored each other. So each day it would be the same thing. So maybe if you couldn't make a morning, but you could make a night, you had that option, or vice versa. You couldn't make a night, but you could make a daytime. You can do that. We also have Zoom options, and then we also can make up classes. If there's classes that you're missing, we can have one-on-one sessions with it to make up times that we're missing too.
That's good.
I have to say, I was impressed with the training. I'm a natural skeptic about some of these things, and when I signed up to be a CASA, I was concerned that I was going to be getting mixed up with a bunch of sentimental, silly, and the training convinced me that this was going to be a very good program, because the attitude generally is that, we do what we can, but this is tough stuff. And we don't fool ourselves into thinking that we can fix all the problems of these children's world. I was trained to make sure I was very realistic about my expectations, to get to the idea of, you might work really hard on this and not have a lot of success. And that, to me, my training kind of convinced me that, okay, I'm going to have a really good team to work with here, because these people are very realistic. They know this is not easy stuff. And so I was very encouraged by the training.
Thank you, George.
I'm generally a skeptic about that sort of stuff. So
Let me add on to the commitment of being an advocate. If you are like working after you've been an advocate, and then you're working and you can't attend a court meeting or an MDT meeting or a team meeting, Marisa and I and Sarah we will step in for you. We just need you to communicate with us and say, yes, maybe you have seen the kid and you have some recommendations and that type of thing. We'll be happy to set in for you if you're working and cannot take the time to attend some of the meetings. We have people of all professions. We have teachers, we just do have people that are committed and has a full-time other job, that we will make sure that we cover areas, so in a whole, you're not left out of anything.
And we're very flexible.
Yes.
And we also have a lot of training opportunities as well once you become an advocate. I know that Sarah's got some really exciting things for us coming up here shortly, so we're looking forward to that. But there's a continual opportunity to have those training opportunities as well.
Cool. So do you have to have like a lot of legal knowledge beforehand, or like know a lot about adoption in the state?
No, that's the beautiful thing about being a CASA is you don't have to know any of that. We will walk through some of the legal, the laws and things and the different court hearings. We will do that as part of training, but I almost guarantee you, if I asked the panelists here to tell me if they remembered the statutes or anything like that, everybody's going to tell me, no, we have no idea what they are, because it's not, it's important to understand what child abuse and what child abuse and neglect are, but you don't have to know the specifics of remembering statutes or things like that. And we will help you learn kind of like our training. We talk about the statutes, the different kinds of court hearings. We talk about court etiquette. We also talk about ages and stages of development, domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health issues. We kind of talk about each of these things on a smaller level just to kind of give some exposure to it, and then talk about how those things apply to the cases that we're going to be looking at, because oftentimes we see a plethora of things such as substance abuse, mental health disorders, domestic violence, all wrapped into one case. And so we'll talk about what that looks like in a case, and how that can impact your advocacy and how you learn to work with that. We talk about learning to work with different kinds of cultures and all kinds of things like that, but you don't have to have the professional knowledge, I guess is what I would call it. You don't have to know all of those things.
Okay, that's good.
But it's really exciting because you do learn a lot of new things that you didn't know before. So it is very exciting to learn those legal steps that you have to go through during the course of a case.
And the CASA team is super gracious and patient because, you know, they tell you everything in the training and they don't expect you to remember it. So you can reach out. I forgot. How does court work? I forgot. What am I supposed to? I forgot. How many pages is the court report? I forgot. What am I supposed to say in an MDT? And they're really gracious about reminding you all the things that they already told you and you have written down in some binder somewhere. They're patient. So, you know, you don't have to remember all those logistical things. You know, you want to be an advocate for your child and they'll help you on the details.
Yeah.
How do you get assigned a case, and do you have a say in, like, you know, say you're like, I don't like teenagers, or I don't like babies, or whatever the case is?
Well, when we go through our training, we'll first talk about, at the end of our training, we'll sit down and have an interview and kind of have a talk about that kind of thing. If there's any kind of, you know, preferences for kiddos that you're working with, or concerns you have with working with different kinds of ages or cultural backgrounds, those kind of things, we'll talk about all of those. And then what happens, and what some of our new advocates are fixing to see with us, is that Sandy, Marisa, and I will all kind of get together and start talking about the advocates who are sworn in, and the kinds of preferences they have. And Sandy and Marisa have this insane amount of knowledge about all of the different cases. And then so we'll just kind of start talking about, you know, what if would, you know, Bob be a great advocate for little Tommy, or things like that. And so once we make those decisions, then Sandy and Marisa will give you a call and say, hey, we've got some cases we think you would be a really great fit for. Come in and look at them. You're going to come in, review them, and you get to ultimately make the decision. Does that case work for me? You know, is that the case I want to be involved in? Sometimes you pick it up and you're like, yep, that is it, and I'm on. And sometimes you got to come in and read it 6 times and maybe look at a couple other ones just to make sure. But whatever it is, we'll support you in getting you the right kind of case.
What if you have like a friend or a sister or a spouse and you're like, we want to volunteer together?
Absolutely. We have lots of husband and wife teams, mother-daughter teams, mother-son teams. Actually, I'm not sure that we actually have a mother-son team. So if there's anybody out there that wants to be a mother-son team, that would be a new one. But we do have even a husband-wife and daughter team. And so friends, you can always team up and be an advocate for a group of children, or even just one singular one. We can definitely make that happen.
And I'm very open to also going alongside an advocate to help them with their case, you know, be assigned to that case, even as, you know, as a case manager. I've done that a couple of times with a couple of our new advocates. They kind of didn't want to go, you know, by themselves. So I would share that case with them.
And I know that we have as Sarah mentioned, we have a husband and wife and daughter trio, and they accepted a case which was 3 children, and the team was so excited because they said, oh, each child gets their own advocate. So it was very fun.
Yeah.
Do you get to stay in touch with your CASA kids after the case closes if you want to?
Totally depends. There are CASAs who stay connected with their kiddos for long times. And then there's also ones that you don't think that you're staying connected, but then years later, or, you know, months later, or whatever it may be, they reach back out and now they're facing their own issues, even after they're out of the system, and you're that person that they call. And so I think it just depends, but the ability to do so is still there. It just kind of sometimes depends on the relationship. And as we all know, especially older kids, as they grow, sometimes they go away from people that they care about and come back. And sometimes they're making it on their own and doing great, whether they stay in touch with us or not. So it just kind of depends.
And I would like to share, I had a gal that aged out, and so I hadn't heard from her, and then lo and behold, I heard from her. she called me and she was in a predicament. And again, she's like, can you help me? And this is during COVID. Can you help me get a hold of the DFS worker that she was, had her case? And I was able to do that because she just needed somebody to talk to. And, she's pregnant. And so then she ended up coming back to the CASA office. So my communication with DFS was if she needs anything, we had some baby items and things like that. So she was able, DFS came to our office and picked up a lot of baby items for her to help her along. But I didn't ever expect to hear back from her. So you just never know, and so that kind of also pulls at your heartstrings when you've made an impression that just like, hey, help, I need to talk to somebody, and they reach out to you. So that was my success story with someone aging out and coming back.
Along those lines, are you expected to share your personal contact information with, your kid or their family or the foster family or all of that stuff?
We never have some kind of expectation or requirement that you're giving out your cell phone number or Facebook to anybody in the case. They are absolutely available to call the CASA office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One of us will answer. And if it's something that is really important, we of course will reach out to you as an advocate to say, hey, this is going on. Wanted you to be aware, those kinds of things. But some advocates do share personal information, and we try to let that be based off of the relationships you're building. But no matter what, they can always reach us at the CASA office.
And one thing too, we never do share our home address with them.
Right.
That's one thing that, that is that's one piece of information that we do not share.
What do you guys wish you had known before becoming a CASA now that you are a CASA?
I'll be glad to share. I didn't realize how easy it was and the little impact that you could make. I know I talked to Sandy before and I didn't feel like I was doing really anything for my teenage kid, but come to find out I was. Just being there, we don't have to have all the answers. Just sometimes just spending those few minutes, hour, whatever, we can, was just really appreciated. So I wish I would have volunteered sooner because it's really, really easy and meaningful.
Oh no, my battery's running low.
Yeah, I would agree with Jim on that. I think a big part of it, why has turned out to be easier than I anticipated, was that going into it, that all the cases that you're going to be involved with, you're dealing with kids that are in very difficult circumstances and in a lot of ways don't have any reason to trust adults in their lives. And then you're the next person thrown at them at a very stressful time. And the thing that's kind of amazed me, and I think the thing that does make it easier, is I've always been astonished at these kids' willingness to sort of accept you into taking a role in their lives and trusting you, which is I can't understand it. They have no reason to trust us. They have no reason to trust adults, and they do it. And when they trust you like that, they're taking a chance that their hearts are going to be broken again. You might be the next person to let them down, but they don't. I haven't had a kid react that way. They have uniformly said, okay, you say you're here to understand what I'm all about and what I want, and they open up, and it's I don't know. I actually don't even understand it. I can't imagine that I would have been the same way, at the ages of these kids. I'd be like, hey, I got enough knuckleheads in my life. I don't need you, So that's the miracle part of it, is that these kids will let you listen to them.
I think for me, the thing I wish I would have known, like Jim and George said, both knowing how easy it was would have been awesome. But also realizing that being a CASA fills my own soul and gives myself a purpose. And if I went out, I started it with this intention to, sorry, my kids are super loud. I started out with this intention that I wanted to change a kiddo's life. I wanted to make a difference in their life. And I didn't realize how much it was going to fill up my own cup. And so I'm insanely grateful for that, because that's amazing when you can do something that makes a difference in the world, but also makes a difference in your life too. That's awesome.
One of the things that when I first decided that I was going to do the training, I was really apprehensive about working with the parents, because it was my thought process that they are going to be angry, and because their children have been taken away, and they're going to possibly take that anger out on me. And I was very, very apprehensive about it. But these parents, some of them have never had any direction. And it is rewarding to work with the parents and to help them and support them through the journey. It's not an easy one for them. And we have to understand that sometimes these children are removed, and it's just a situation where the parent might not have had the ability to learn the parenting skills that we as maybe advocates have learned through our parents being, a role model for us. These parents haven't had the opportunity to have those role models. And that was one of the things that has been easy for me too, is to work with the parents and know that I can help them as well as help their child.
Are you waiting for me? So I think I would probably agree with Marisa that my biggest fear, I guess, was working with the parents, because I was already judging them on how you could do this to your child. The neglect, the abuse, and it turned my heart to really, when I was able to get those resources to those parents and listen to the kids that could tell me what bothered them. And the heart-wrenching story that I would have is the one case when you have an older child, that a sibling, maybe there's 3 siblings in the family unit, and because mom and or dad was not responsible, then the older child was the one that was being the parent and taking care of their siblings, so how do you reach out to that child and let them be a child instead of a parent, so that was hard for me to understand, but it was necessary for them to give them their own ownership to their identity of who they were as a child and not as a parent, and help the parents get those resources that they needed.
Cool. Well, I have one last question, unless there is more questions from the audience. All right, so my last question is, what is your favorite thing about being a CASA?
George.
Okay, I'll go. I think, I don't know, wow, how do you put it in words? Just being able to help, just being able to be there, to be a support. Like I said, I had the 2 parents, I was able to help them, and you know, helping my little guy, of course. Miss Sandy, she's seen them grow older. My little one's got a girlfriend now, so his CASA's getting a back seat now. So, but I'm glad to see him. I'm glad to see a success story that, and I know all cases aren't going to be this way, but it appears that seeing that I was able to help in some type of way, if it was no more than just being a shoulder to lean on or a listening ear, whether it was the parents or the foster parents or the CASA kid, I was able to give back. So.
I would say, in my experience, you know, what I've constantly reminded of now is that there's always hope, and there's always a reason for gratitude. You know, these kids are always, they're grateful, and you go into these cases, you wonder how they're ever going to sort things out, and it happens. And so there's always, it just reminds me in my own life, there's always a reason for hope, and there's always something to be grateful for. And those two things will help you out. Like here's here. Good night, you. Okay.
Oh, good night.
Yep, it's 8 o'clock, time for bed.
Can I just say, George, wow, what a timing that she had to come in and say that just as what you were saying.
Yeah, that was not scripted.
Well, I'm going to say, I'm going to give CASA a little plug for a couple of other things too. Is one, we have amazing advocates who are so insanely dedicated to the families that they're working with. And so that is one of my most favorite things about CASA. But in addition to advocating for these kiddos, we also do have some side little projects that we do. Right now, we're helping to give kiddos in foster care brand new books, blankets, some little goodies, and helping the foster families with some a meal gift card just to make dinner easy one night, and then also Christmas presents. We also have a Shoes for Kids program where we can provide kids in need with brand new pair of tennis shoes or whatever kind of shoes that they need, but brand new pair, nothing that's been worn by anybody else or 2 sizes too small or 2 sizes too big, weather appropriate, all of that. So we have a couple other things that we try to do to give back to the community. And all those kinds of projects come because we have amazing volunteers who give so freely to everything that they're doing, that CASA wants to help try to give back in that same way too to the rest of the community. So those are my favorite things about CASA.
Well, I think one of the things that I enjoy most is CASA came into my life after I had retired from my, I guess, real job. And I'd lost my husband, so I was widowed. And it just filled another place in my heart to be able to be around the kids and just enjoy being around them. And it makes you really look forward to those visits with those kids because they always bring something fun to the table. And so that's one of my favorite pieces in a CASA.
Okay, so my favorite part of being a CASA is truly, I mean, I love it myself, but I love hearing from our advocates. I love seeing how they've touched the hearts of these families. You know, what they bring to us in our office and share with us, and their uniqueness in relationship building with the parents and or the children, no matter what age, is just remarkable. I mean, we've had advocates that have travel to Casper or travel to Denver, or helping the parents out, or just the fishing trips, George. I mean, it's just just those little things that these kids don't get on a regular, normal basis. I just really love the fact that our advocates are so awesome, and they just really it's a great team to be on. It's a great team, a great organization to be a part of, because we touch children that you never thought that you could. And it is, like Sarah said, it makes you full, your heart full of being able to be part of this team that helps be the voice for a child in our community.
And I'll echo something that Sandy said. We have some very, very dedicated advocates. They are the best group ever, and I can't say enough good about them.
Exactly. I will share a really cool story. I had a gentleman come in to me a couple days ago, one of the advocates. Now, keep in mind, he is raising his daughter's children, so his grandchildren, and he has 3 of them. And that advocate said, Grandpa and I went out for dinner, and we had a great time because Grandpa needed to talk to somebody about the situation. So the advocate helped Grandpa, just kind of just listen to me. And I mean, it was just great to hear that Tom was able to be there for this grandpa. And I said, sometimes we're just put in the place at the right time. That older man needed him to just talk to, and he felt so much better that even as an adult, he needed somebody to talk to. So it's full circle of what we do. We touch a lot of people, and a lot of people touch our hearts.
That is a great note to end on. Thank you so much, panelists, for not only serving CASA, but also taking time out so that you can tell other people what it's like. Sarah, if there is anyone listening right now that wants to take the next steps, what are those?
Call the CASA office. It's 307-222-1902. You can shoot us a message on Facebook. You can visit us on our website at casalc.org. Contact us because we will be getting a training started. Yes.
Good job, Katie.
But contact us because we will be starting a training after the beginning of the year. So we'll get through the holidays here. And we would love to have you join us.
Okay. Good job, Katie.
Thank you,
and
everybody.
I want to say thank you so much for hosting this for all of us.
Of course.
Thank you, Gracie.